With all that walking around Disney parks, we should be getting a pretty good workout, right? So how far do you walk and how many calories do you burn in a typical day at Walt Disney World? Well, today we're going to find out. Let's hop into it. Hello and welcome to the Parkhop. My name is Jacob. Have you ever been on your 10th hour of a day spent park hopping around the Disney parks and your ankles are killing you and your legs are hurting and you've wondered to yourself, am I actually going to be lighter at the end of this day than when I started? I mean, it certainly should be possible. We walk much further in a day at the Disney parks than we would on a typical day when we're not on vacation. And with each step, you're burning calories. So how many calories do you actually burn on a typical day spent at Walt Disney World? Well, let's start by looking at just how far you really walk on a park hopping day. Using the Google Maps measuring tool, we did some really rough measuring and estimated that there are roughly 3 miles of paved walkways inside the Magic Kingdom, about 3.5 in Epcot, and right around 2 miles in Hollywood Studios. Animal Kingdom's a little tougher to measure because of tree cover, but it looks like there's between 3 and 3.5 miles there. Now, this isn't really indicative of anything. If you're like me, you walk the same pathways many times during a day in the parks. You know, a line is shorter that way, but the next fast pass is over here, and your dining reservation is back around this way. You get the point. You're likely to trek through the same areas of the park multiple times over the course of the multiple hours that you spend there. So I thought that the best way to figure out how many miles a person might walk in a typical day was to simply measure how far we walked in a typical day. Using the popular fitness tracker Map My Walk, we were able to start mapping the moment we walked away from a location and stop mapping whenever we stepped onto a mode of transportation or onto an attraction. On this day, we just kind of played it by ear, didn't really plan anything in particular, except that we knew we wanted to hit 3 different parks. And here's how we spent that day. My wife and I left our room at Port Orleans French Quarter at 9:42 a.m. We walked to the bus stop and caught the bus to Animal Kingdom. After departing the bus depot, we walked through the gates and straight to Pandora, where we rode Na'vi River Journey. After this, we took a long and meandering route towards Dinoland and Primeval World. After our spin around the track, we headed up towards the queue for Expedition Everest. After escaping the clutches of the Yeti and having some lunch, we walked towards Kilimanjaro Safari, only to find it temporarily closed, so we headed for Dinosaur instead. We saw that Everest was practically a walk-on, so we went and rode it a second time. By this time, it was around 2:30 p.m. and we walked back to the bus depot to head for Epcot. Once there, we immediately stopped by Spaceship Earth to be among its many passengers. After our time machine rotated backwards and returned us to Epcot, we walked over to the Land Pavilion for Soarin' and then journeyed over towards the Imagination Pavilion. After this, we walked back to the bus depot and headed back for the TTC. After this, we set out for the Magic Kingdom. Our first stop there was the Plaza Ice Cream Parlor for dinner, don't judge me, and then we wandered over towards the Country Bears and Big Thunder Mountain. We walked along the Rivers of America to the Haunted Mansion. Grimly grinning, we wandered around Fantasyland a bit before making our way to Mickey's PhilharMagic. From there, we headed towards the Tomorrowland Transit Authority People Mover. But it will always be Wedway to me. A short walk from there took us to Space Mountain, followed by a late-night voyage to Pirates of the Caribbean. With today turning into tomorrow, we walked back to the bus depot, rode back to our hotel, and walked back to our room. Now, during this terribly inefficient park hopping day, we left our hotel room a little bit before 10 a.m. and got back to our room at about 1, meaning we were on the move for more than 15 hours. We likely did a little extra walking because of the bus transfers and generally having no plan, but this is very representative of what a lot of people do when they come to Disney World for just a day or two. So after this long day of park hopping, how far did we walk? 8.16 miles. That's a lot more walking than most people do during a typical day, including me, although my ankles could have sworn that we did at least a half marathon, but whatever. Now that we know how far someone might walk in a typical day at Disney, we can figure out how many calories that person might burn. That amount's going to vary based on your weight, but we'll base our calculations off of men and women of average size in the United States. The average man in the US is 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighs about 197 pounds. A person of this size will burn around 106 calories per mile at a moderate pace. The average female is 5'4" and 169 pounds. A person this size will burn around 90 calories per mile. This means that the average size man and the average size woman, if they walked the same distance we did, would burn around 865 and 734 calories respectively. And the more you weigh, the more calories you'll burn, and the less you weigh, the fewer you're going to burn. I'll link to a chart in the description down below if you're interested in calculating how many calories you would burn per mile. So, what do you think? Is that more or less than you expected? Honestly, I would have thought that I walked further, and I also would have thought that I burned more calories. Nevertheless, that is a pretty decent workout. The question now is, if we're burning all of these calories over the course of our vacation, shouldn't we theoretically be losing weight? I mean, I can't seem to figure out why it doesn't work that way. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification icon. And be sure to leave a comment down below if our numbers were higher or lower than you expected. Until next time, my name's Jacob, reminding you to gather your belongings, watch your head and step, and take all small children by the hand.